Hi, and welcome to this live reading from The Game is Afoot, a Sherlock Holmes and Watson mystery by David Raymond. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. I breathe her in deeply, and the most primal part of my brain pumps to life. It's not just her. This house is full of scents which overwhelm me. Bleach, cheap Pinot Noir, a singular rusty aroma. Blood. Jackpot. Another Miami murder scene home listed for sale by the enigmatic Shadow Holmes. Never heard of her, you say? Fortunately, I know every minute detail of her adventures. I'm her confidant, partner, raconteur, and we share a bed. Watson's the name. To the uninitiated, Shadow Holmes appears the odd duck. Don't get me wrong, mate. Her face looks nice enough on a real estate sign. However, I'd wager the average bloke couldn't pick her out of a book of mugshots. Unless you were fortunate enough to gaze upon Shadow's eyes, which are watery gray, simultaneously ever-present and far away, and possess the ability to make one feel naked, and not in a good way. As to her form, her body is Rubenesque perfection. Not that you'd know it, because she dresses like a nun on a night out. When she speaks, though, when Shadow Holmes utters a single word, people hang on each syllable as if attending the book reading of an acclaimed novelist who holds the key to world peace, eternal life, global warming, delicious vegan cupcakes, and hour-long orgasms. Each of Shadow's words is chosen with care. They must be. People have profound expectations of the great-granddaughter of Mycroft Holmes, Sherlock's older, smarter brother. Shadow inherited a great many traits from her great-grandfather Mycroft: an unrivaled analytic mind, a fondness for tasty food, and the laziness of a lion. Fun fact, mate, lions sleep 18 hours a day. Shadow used to sleep late into the morning and top it off with an afternoon cat nap. Thus, the schedule of a realtor suited her. Additionally, with a mind like hers, she could do the job in but an hour a day. Once her life lacked rigor, until with my help, she found her true calling: solving murders. Mind you, not just any murders, those which take place in the sanctity of one's own home. Afterward, naturally, we sell the domiciles. Don't get judgy, dear reader. It's not as mercenary as it sounds. We are all well compensated. However, we only list homes with unsolved murders and subsequently solve them. Being Florida, selling these homes is a growing market. Turns out some twats want to buy houses where people were murdered. Once they're settled in, some buyers go so far as to host murder mystery reenactment parties with dinner guests trying to figure out who was off and who did the offing. In fairness, some of the crimes we solve do lend themselves to such theater. For example, last year we sold a home where a man had been killed by a falling coconut which broke through a screen porch, landing upon the victim's head. Shadow and I discovered the widow had murdered her husband and framed the coconut. A decade ago, Shadow was far from the cool, composed, occasionally brooding, celebrity crime-fighting realtor she is today. I came into her life right after the tragedy that forever transformed her existence and mine. Finding your parents murdered in your childhood home would unhinge anyone. However, knowing you could have prevented it would have sent a weaker human over the bloody edge. After the murders, Shadow tortured herself with if-onlys. If only she hadn't missed a lifetime of clues. If only she'd deduced it earlier. If only she hadn't let her guard down. If only she hadn't gone on that date. About that, trust me, Shadow Holmes could easily be voted lady least likely to swipe right on Tinder. If she wasn't working, Shadow was typically sitting quietly at home reading. This girl reads all the greats: Kafka, Hemingway, Twain, Hyland, Raymond, Doyle, Sagan. Books and scientific research about everything from string theory to string cheese. They publish it, she reads it, and recalls every word. Her appetite for knowledge is voracious. Her appetite for human intimacy, not so bloody much. Knowing her as I do now, I found it difficult at the time to comprehend why she went on that date. The woman who asked her out was intelligent, well-read, charming, and although at 4'8", considered a dwarf in medical terms, she was built like Beyonce. Indeed, that Beyonce part likely explains the date, right, mate? Hang on. The scent of blood aggravates my bladder. Just duck outside behind this mango tree and... much better. Don't want to mug up any evidence. Never catch proper CSI using glue at a crime scene, will you? Shadow was 33 when it transpired. She had 3 previous relationships, 1 with a man, 2 with women. Met at a real estate symposium at Miami Beach during 2 days of otherwise mind-numbing seminars on topics such as the best shade of gray to paint a home for a quick sale in the trendy South Florida marketplace. Shadow, who at the time nearly held doctoral degrees in astrophysics and mathematics, found Mary Janitori's presentation on the predictive analytics of real estate sales data stimulating. Mary asked her out for lunch the next day. Shadow's first instinct was to decline the offer. However, she found herself indescribably aroused. Whilst it was a short drive from Shadow's home in Biscayne Park to Jimbo's on Virginia Key, Mary had a better idea. Taking her jet boat, because you'd have to be an absolute wanker not to love a boat that does 200 kilometers per hour. A loosely assembled collection of wood shacks, old trailers, and older drums. Jimbo's was a ramshackle open-air waterfront bar, fish shack, bait shop, with ice-cold beer and even cooler patrons. Models, bikers, rappers, businessmen, and fishermen all hoisted a few back in Jimbo's heyday. Shadow had never been and was excited. A rare emotion for Shadow Holmes. Indeed, before our adventures commenced, Shadow's emotions were as guarded as a flock of sheep on a border collie farm. However, as soon as the boat sped from the dock, she felt liberated. They arrived at Jimbo's in 12 minutes flat. Mary skillfully squeezed into the last spot of dockage along the mangroves. They ordered beer, fish dip, and a sleeve of saltines and wandered about sipping beer and taking in the gritty ambience until they located a suitable spot at one of the creaky wooden tables fashioned from a repurposed door. Mary stretched across the table, her fabulous form fighting the containment of her polka dot bikini top, and shot Shadow a disarmingly sinful smile. Her lips were upon Shadow's before she was fully seated. It was a sensual kiss with a delicate tongue twirl which caused Shadow to tremble. She had never experienced such titillation, and being a Holmes needed to understand why. Shadow opened her eyes, studying all around her, especially Mary's face. The face reveals a great deal to the astute observer. To Shadow's surprise, Mary was staring back. Until that moment, Mary's eyes had been hidden by sunglasses. Shadow recognized something peculiar and familiar in Mary's face that she failed to observe before. There was a glint of scarlet in Mary's eyes, and her forehead was the least bit pronounced. Shadow pulled away. Mary's smile turned sinister. Her head sluggishly oscillated side to side in a cobra-like fashion whilst she emitted a most curious tss. Shadow's blood ran cold. She fled, shedding her flip-flops, running barefoot on the dirt, smacking herself in the forehead over and over again, for being such a lust-struck, blithering idiot, blind to the obvious. She ducked into the woods, frantically calling her parents on her cell phone. Nobody answered. Her heart plummeted to her gut. She rushed to the dock, covered in a mist of cold, grimy sweat. Naturally, her date along with the jet boat were nowhere in sight. Halfway into the cab ride to her parents' home, the poison Jane secreted into Shadow's beer began to take effect. Her chest tightened, her heart skipped a beat, then another. She found her house again and again. Her calf muscles twitched, her breathing became labored, saliva filled her mouth. She had to make it home. If the directive her father issued long ago wasn't a fairy tale, Shadow knew she was their only hope. When the cab finally arrived, she struggled for each breath. She battled her legs through the front door into the living room. It was there she discovered her parents' bodies slumped on the couch, drool stains pooled on the flowered pillows beneath their lifeless heads. Grief struck like a thunderbolt. Shadow's chest tightened. She could barely breathe, let alone stand. The room spun around and around. Her hand twitched along the top of the couch, deciding if its job was to steady her or guide her down to die next to her parents. The idea of succumbing to death became more appealing with each gasp for air, yet the thought of the Holmes clan being wiped out by a Moriarty roused the last of Shadow's strength. Never, Shadow shouted, determined to follow her father's command with her dying breath. She stumbled to the backyard, seized a shovel, and fought her way to the ancient oak tree standing sentinel between her parents' house and her modest guest cottage. She only had to walk 13 paces. Shadow steeled herself against the mighty tree, wheezed, aimed southeast, and counted her steps aloud. She made it to 11, fell, and crawled back to start anew. Focusing her immense brain power on her goal, Shadow gulped a shallow breath, lurched 13 paces, and thrust the shovel into the ground. She dug until she heard a pain. Her addled brain barely directing her limbs, she threw the shovel aside and burrowed with bare hands. She retrieved the cylinder from the moist ground, broke the seal with her dirt-filled fingernails, removed the yellowing envelope, and opened it, revealing a bit of old parchment. She wrestled her phone from her swimsuit top and dialed the number, which even in her diminished state she recognized as having been written in great-grandfather Mycroft's hand. A young woman answered. Shadow managed to get off 4 words before collapsing on the damp bed of oak leaves. The game is afoot.